I'm Mac McCarthy, and I help people with their breakups. And today, dealing with depression and anxiety during a breakup. Notice I said during a breakup. And sometimes, there's some people out there that either have had issues with anxiety and depression already in their life, which I think would be a separate case, or some people go, I don't really have this problem very often, so it's new to me. And in that case, I think when it's new to you, it's a little scary because you've never dealt with it before. But on the flip side of that, the silver lining to that, if you haven't dealt with it before, congratulations, it's a tough thing to deal with. I've never been someone that would identify with being someone that's in a depressed state. I was actually very surprised to see Tim Ferriss, the author of The 4-Hour Work Week and the Tim Ferriss podcast, who I think is just a impressive individual, impressive author and podcaster, and just seems to have it all together. If he ever has a problem, he seems to dissect it and work at it. And this individual, he's given some TED Talks where he said he's battled depression throughout his life. He's thought about suicide. And it shocked me. It really surprised me because there's some high achievement people, highly successful from the outside, that have issues with this stuff. I've had clients that are highly successful in their careers that battle depression fiercely. But let's get into the fact that if you're going to deal with it based on the breakup. So let's say this is something that's not as common for you. This is not something that you identify with regularly or that you've had since you were a teenager. Let's just say that during dealing with the breakup, it brought on depression and anxiety specifically, right? Or you're in a relationship. What's up, Rob? First on deck today. Congratulations. Or you're in a relationship where you've got heaps, as they say in Australia, of depression and anxiety because of the relationship. I think first and foremost, if it's something new to you, you really have to identify, when did it start? When did it start? What did it start with? What do you keep coming back to? Because I feel like a lot of times when you feel depressed or you have anxiety, don't you keep coming back to something? And you also tend to stack things. And I myself have bouts where I have bad days or a bad few moments, and that's when I start stacking all the bad things and putting them in one box. Oh, and this. Oh, and this. Oh, and that. Oh, and this. But yesterday I watched Andrew Huberman, who's a doctor from Stanford who has a podcast. He's been on Joe Rogan. He's been on all these, he's done the whole circuit. And he was talking about just some quick tools to overcome anxiety and depression. But one thing you'll be really surprised about, would you associate depression with stress, or would you make those two separate things?
I think those two are separate things.
Okay, so what would you say make them separate? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just curious what you think, because I know you've researched this, Dan.
Stress most likely will happen because there's a cause for it.
Like an immediate cause, more or less?
Yeah.
Okay.
But depression, it can't just happen.
It can just happen.
Yeah.
There's no trigger to depression?
There is, but it can also happen without a trigger.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
And when it doesn't happen with a trigger, it just floods.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in that case, stress is something that's more triggered.
Mm-hmm.
This is your opinion, so
yeah.
We're not saying you're right or wrong, because I think people get lost that I think that people like Dr. Andrew Huberman and academics or doctors, right? A lot of times they use data, whatever you want to call it, and they do studies. So they're like, this is true because this is what the numbers show us, right? So a lot of times if me and you are talking, we've looked at some of these, studies, we've read some things, and we're still drawing our own opinions based on our own experiences. So I would say they're separate, but as Rob just said, but they can exist together. So I would say that depression wouldn't be as simple just to say everyone has the same type or same level, probably. Would that be fair? Mm-hmm. Right? Like you wouldn't say, well, you don't have depression. I really have depression. Well, you don't know how that person feels. Yeah. Right? Or what they're telling you. But I would say, okay, let's say that they are separate. Let's say that after a breakup, you've never had depression before, but now you have it after this breakup. Would you say that it's easier or more likely, Rob, you can jump in on this also, it's easier or more likely that you can deal with depression if it's the first time you've really had a serious case of it out of a breakup, as opposed to maybe since you were a teenager, you've been battling it for various reasons? What do you think, Dan? Do you understand my question, or was that too long?
Yeah. It was too long.
Okay. So what I mean by that, let me give an example.
Okay.
Let's say that you say, oh, I've been battling depression since I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. If you're battling depression, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just one reason.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, that's what you were saying to me earlier. Oh, it can be trigger or not trigger. It could just be that I'm just depressed. Mm-hmm. I don't really have a particular reason.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then, okay, so let's say you're 23 now. Let's say you're 30 years old. Mm-hmm. You just came out of your first breakup and you were with the woman for 4 or 5 years and you were really happy and the breakup was really hard on you. Mm-hmm. And you during those 5 years you still battled depression, but it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
Now that you've broken up, do you think it would increase the severity of your depression from when you were a teenager?
It could. Yeah, it could.
Or would you have more familiarity with it where you could deal with it better?
I think it would increase.
You think it would be worse?
Yeah, it would be worse.
Okay. Because I'm saying that if you have it for the first time, and this is what I dealt with in my own life in my late 20s. Don't get me wrong, I had sad moments, or I had times where I was really upset or worried about something, but not like full-fledged, like you can't get out of bed sadness. Mm-hmm. And it didn't last forever, but I just remember I never had this feeling before. It was very unfamiliar. It was very uncomfortable, and I didn't want to accept it as just being who I was. But it lasted months. It lasted months. I could function, right? Mm-hmm. But I had never had it that deep. So Hazel Chavez says, there's a lot of methods to help with depression and anxiety. You need to look deeper with the way of thinking, eating habits, lack of sleep, lack of exercise, making yourself busy, lack of vitamins. So I posted a video on the Discord from Andrew Huberman. I don't know if it was the one I watched because he has so many videos, just like me, I suppose. I don't know which one it was, but one thing that he said that was interesting, he goes, a lot of people get down about being stressed. This is interesting. And he goes, this is one thing that I don't see in a lot of other videos. And like you're saying, stress and depression can be separate, but they also can coexist. And they also, obviously stress could ignite depression or make it worse. We can agree on that. He was saying pockets of stress, he didn't use the word pockets, but peaks in stress throughout your day. So he didn't use this as an example, but traffic or your boss at work irritates you and gives you a deadline, and you're like, oh shit. Like I got to get this done by the end of the day. Actually, this usually takes me 3 or 4 days, Mac. You know what I mean? And you're like, you're stressed. How am I going to get this done? But he said what stress is actually, he kept saying generic, which means fake to me. So if I was able to interview him, I would want to know, what do you mean by generic, that stress is generic? But he said stress actually serves a very useful purpose, because when you're stressed, you get more focused. You get more alert. That actually makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. So let's just look at it this way. If you had positive stress where you're worried about something, you have a deadline, is a good example, but you go, I'm going to get this done. So you have a finish line at the end of the stress. It actually is a good thing. And he said it actually makes your immune system work better, which this is the only time, I've never heard this before, that stress actually is healthy. What he was saying is that stressful moments that push you to get things done, or I call it have a finish line. He said have, something that has a timeline on it, right? It serves you. The problem, he said, is when you have stress elongated over 2 days, and then you're never coming out of it. In other words, there's no finish lines. There's no, okay, I'm okay now. So he was saying, for example, let's say you had a tough day at work. It was really stressful. You got a lot of work done, but you still have a ton of work to get done the next day. You just got out of college, Danny, so you might have had this at school where 1 week you go, damn, I got all this work due.
Yeah.
Probably. That was clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, where do I start? I don't even want to do this project, or I can't get this done, right? You procrastinate. You know the word procrastinate, right? Yeah. So I procrastinate too. So, but eventually, if you have a deadline, even if you didn't want to get it done, you do get it done, right?
Yeah.
Or you didn't graduate.
You just have to.
You just have to.
Yeah.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you did get that report done, or you wrote the speech or whatever, and you did get done, it was relieving, right? Like, okay, I did my work, I got it in. Like, I got a finish line. And then the stress was released a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what he was saying is, this is actually really healthy. And it actually creates a better immune system. And the problem is when you don't have up and down stress, which sounds negative, and you don't have moments of serotonin. Serotonin are these, like working out. But one of the examples he gave that stood out to me was having a pet. He said he has a dog. And I thought about my parents. My parents, if it was probably just them two, the police would be called to the house a few times a week. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, they got 3 dogs, and the dogs all have different personalities, and they're really close to the dogs, and it unifies them. But also, as soon as they walk in the door, however stressful life is, my dad had a stroke a year ago. My mom just recently had a couple, you know what I mean? Yeah. You walk in the door and the dogs are licking you and they're happy to see you. There's a little serotonin. You know what I mean? The stress comes down. You're home. This is why I think a lot of people like a home too. If you have a home that once you get home, you feel safe. As simple as that sounds, because some people go, "Oh, of course I feel safe at home." Not everyone feels safe at home. You could live in a bad neighborhood. I think you told me, Danny, you lived a place where you didn't like your neighbors, and they were a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, that would yell and in the night.
And they were dangerous a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like they're bad characters. I won't go into detail, but right?
I think
that's. Go ahead.
I think they did drugs too.
Right. Okay. Throw that on there too. People that are like that are impulsive, and they can be dangerous because they're not rational. And so you come home to relax. So this contributes to someone having elongated stress that could turn into depression. I'm not a doctor on this. This is just my own theory. Anyone that wants to punch in and say something on the live stream, because some people will be like, no, Mac, I really have depression. You don't know what you're talking about. I'd like to hear your take. This is an open discussion. But let's say Danny goes to school. Danny's got a really bad day. He's got work flooded on him. He's got homework due. One of his friends said something mean to him, right?
Yeah.
And then he's got the neighbor next door that looks at him sideways, right? That you're like, oh shit, and then it just goes. You never get those serotonins where you go from stress to like, okay, good moment. Now Andrew Huberman didn't put it this way, but I have my own way of putting it, and I just thought about it. It's like, I think people that are able to deal with stress better have these pockets of what you'd call a release. And some people, it's very simple. Oh, I exercise every day. For me, one of my biggest things is I'm not going to exercise the same time every day, but I'm always going to be able to go for a walk, a jog, the gym, yoga. I'm not going to do one of those at the same time, organized like some people do, regimented. But if I don't do it 2 days in a row and I haven't exercised, I notice that I'm on edge a little bit. I'm a little bit more in a bad mood. So I've always identified that as my release. But I think that other people, it can be other things. Like for you, Danny, you play video games quite a bit, right? And does that give you a less stress? I'm sure you're not stressing during a game, are you?
Yeah.
And that's what he was saying, is that stress by itself is not an enemy. It's actually an inhibitor of the immune system, and it actually wakes you up and has you focus. It's when you're stuck in stress and you don't break it. So he said he had a couple tools. They're very common tools. One of the simple things is, have you ever heard people do that?
Yeah.
My mom does that a lot when she talks. But actually, it's, what are you doing? Just to release, right? You're releasing tension. He said a really good sigh is good for you. Someone might go, okay, whatever, Mac. That seems too simple. Try it. You're taking a break from your thoughts for a minute and letting them go. That's what it is. That's what it is. So the other things he had suggested were different breathing techniques. And one of them was Wim Hof's method of 25 to 30 deep breaths. And you can look up the Wim Hof method. And here's the thing that gets me about this. People go, oh, yeah, that's too simple. But they don't do it. Right? Oh, I get depression. I have clients sometimes, they go, I wake up with anxiety. Take an ice cold shower. Oh, okay, yeah. Did you do it? No. The physiology change wakes up your body in a way that takes you out of the zone for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, right? If you have ice cold water on you, are you worried about your problems? Or are you worried about getting warm and, your body has something else to worry about? But people won't necessarily do this. They won't do it. And so you get to these problems where you think, yeah, I just have this, but you have to try these other things. And one of the other things he had suggested was, so I thought to myself, I've heard of other breathing, but he said double. This will make you more alert. So this would pull you out of a sad state maybe and get you more excited, get your heartbeat up. Try it, folks. I've done it before. The other one, the Wim Hof method, is more 25 times. Have you done that before, Danny?
Yeah.
And then you hold your breath at the end. And you will wake up. You will feel a different state. You will feel you're not cured, but for a moment, you're getting some change in you, right? And by the way, Andrew Huberman said you can do the same thing if you went and sprinted, but no one likes to sprint. Some people, I can't run. I don't sprint. Let me know, the 4 people that are on deck, what's your best tool? What's your best tool with anxiety and depression, whether it's during a breakup or whether it's overall? Because anxiety and depression are kind of opposite things in a lot of ways, don't you think?
I don't know.
Do you get anxiety?
Yeah.
Anxiety is more worry. They're 2 different words, so they're not the same thing. They're 2 different things, correct? What would you rather feel?
Like between anxiety and stress,
Yeah.
I'd rather feel stress.
Really?
Yeah.
Because anxiety's more, but depression and anxiety, what would you rather feel?
Depression and anxiety, they are both really, really bad. Depression,
Really?
yeah.
Hmm. If you had to say, what's your number one weapon against depression
Depression.
for you? If you were like, hey man, you met someone and they're really going through it, and you were like, hey, this is the best thing that's worked for me in the past.
Would be the beach with the sunset.
The beach with the sunset, because
Yeah.
it takes you out of that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what does that do for you?
I don't know. It just helps me like forget about the depression.
Helps you forget about the depression for the
Yeah.
moment because of the
Like
because
take
of the
me out of it.
well, the environment.
Yeah.
The environment
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
That's underrated too. Environment change is probably
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest things, and people feel like they can't change their environment. But even if you can't change where you live, which a lot of people can't, but they can plan for it. That's what I tell people. Move from where you're at. A big part of your ill feelings, if your ill feelings are really bad, those feelings will suddenly be associated with the place that you stay at the most. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you had a house that had a very bad childhood, and you got abused when you were a kid, this isn't you, Danny, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And you got to leave that house when you were 18, go away to college. I bet you'd feel better immediately.
Yeah.
And then when you go back to visit that house, you'll feel those feelings again. It's really weird how that works. It's really weird how that works. And then the opposite occurs if you had a great childhood or fond memories of that house. When you go back, you get a good feeling. You get like a really nice feeling. This is why some people, I love my grandma's house, or I love this. This is one of those topics that people don't get a lot of views, but people tell me when they're in the middle of the breakup that they're battling this. They're battling it, but they also are like, I got anxiety again. I got depression. I got these things again. And a lot of times, some of these little tools, these breathing techniques, these changes, they don't go for them. Leandra says, I'm on meds for anxiety and depression from childhood trauma. I'm learning to understand my triggers and dealing with them by changing my internal dialogue. So, Leandra, that's really thank you for sharing that, because that's something not everyone would share. Can you give me an example of your internal dialogue, and if it's not too personal, can you walk us through? You get a trigger, and then what do you do? What do you do with the internal dialogue? Because I've said that often too. You're your best coach, and your internal dialogue counts. You're right. What you say to yourself counts. It does. Because part of the problem, correct me if I'm wrong, that really gets us down in a ditch deep is talking down about the situation. That we're saying, like, this is worse, this is worse, this is worse, right? And so it's not easy just to turn it around. One-legged pigeon. Hey, coach, how are you? You probably don't remember it. I will be shocked if you do. I remember this name, but did you send in I mean, my memory is pretty damn good, especially with past clients. But did you send in your name and have a story that wasn't the name One-Legged Pigeon? Because some people say they don't realize when they send in stories to my website, rightmac.com, and I don't blame people. They use an alias, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't put their full name. They're like, oh, this is a website. This is a public YouTube. No problem. And then they'll be like, do you remember me? And I'll be like, so which name did you use in the end? That's why when we do a live coaching session, when we get to know each other, that's when I really remember people for sure. That's a different kind of connection. When we talk for an hour, 2 hours, you remember people about their stories and how the stories feel. No, I didn't. I'm the Mexican in Boston. Mexican in Boston. Let me see if I can remember. You used to watch the live stream when I first started doing live streams, I think. And I'm trying to remember where you're not originally from Boston. You're from somewhere else. I'm not just saying that because you said I'm a Mexican in Boston, though. That's funny. Go ahead. And how are things going right now with your breakup or relationship? If I'm correct, if I had to guess, your breakup was by the time you got to me, you were already. Yep, that's right. I grew up in California. Yeah, that's not enough to go on there. 2 years later. Well, that'll get people's ears perked up. If I titled this, I'd have about double the people on deck. If I said X comes back 2 years later, people would be like, "Oh shit, let me get on this." The people that are in no contact, because everyone wants to know. That's the other part of getting into this depression and anxiety thing. The biggest part of anxiety is you feel like there's no end. Right? I think that's why a lot of people like to take medicine or pills, because people say, well, take this 2 times a day for the next 2 months and you should feel better. There's a timestamp. See how that's reassuring? Whether it's true or not, whether it's good for you or not is different. But you telling yourself, oh, if I do this, this, and this every day and I do it for 2 months, and that's where people get screwed up in no contact and breakups. They're like, so tell me what to do for a month or 2 months to get them back. And I'm like, well, it's not that simple. If you said, hey, Mac, I want abs, I want a 6-pack, so you can go to a personal trainer. They can assess your muscle you might, and by the way, one person could get abs in a month and one person it would take 6 months, right? Mm-hmm. That would be accurate. But you could discover some kind of formula probably that worked and kind of tweak it. Here's the thing. This is what people get lost in. With breakups, you're dealing with another human that's allowed to go in any direction they want. So there's not a controlled element there. Does that make, I don't know if that makes sense. If I want a goal of mine to be to own a 67 Ford Mustang, vintage, convertible, badass car. Look it up, Danny, if you've ever seen one of those. That's cool.
Specific.
Yeah, it's specific. It's not a human, though. Mm-hmm. So it's not going anywhere. It doesn't have free will. It doesn't have feelings. I could be like, all right, and I've looked them up, and they're about 25 grand US in perfect condition. So now I have a finish line. I have a number. That's a goal I could reach and monitor. Breakups, this is the part that just eats people up with anxiety, is like, hey, man, if I do no contact for like a month, where's my progress if they don't call me back? Well, your progress is that you didn't talk for a month. No. I would know if there was progress if they called me back or sent me an email. You see how that works? Mm-hmm. It's a messed up thing sometimes.
1969, right?
67. 67, 65, 66, they all look the same, okay. I think. Aaron Rodriguez, who lives... No, maybe I'm wrong. Aaron Rodriguez, you live in Mexico. Is this the guy that has the pizza place in Mexico City? I suffer depersonalization. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks pretty cool.
It's a cool car, right?
Yeah.
I would rather have one of those, Danny, than have a badass 2021 Benz. Mm-hmm. That's I like 1960s Camaro or Mercury Cougar or something like that. Damn. Some days are better than others. I'm tired of feeling like this. I'm not familiar with deaths realization from anxiety. I've been in a lot of stress. Lost my dad, granddad, my girlfriend of 5 years left me. I did not want to take medication. It's been shit. Fuck, man, that's a lot, bro. That gives me, you know what I mean? That's a lot, Aaron. That's a lot. I can sit in this chair and have a live stream and talk about that. I haven't experienced that, bro. That's a lot, man. I just want to say, you know what? That's like dad, granddad, and girlfriend of 5 years. Guess what, though? You're still alive. You're still kicking. And I'll tell you what. No offense to Leandra, who's saying she's taking meds. I commend you for saying that you didn't want to take medication. I believe that you can get through this, man. I would start with it when you have, let's separate the dad, the granddad, and the girlfriend, because that's one thing that you're doing. And by the way, that's just a subconscious thing, right? You put out all those in a row because they're all losses. They're all losses. So you go, I got 3 major losses there. Look at this. Well, let's separate them because they're not the same loss. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's do this, Aaron. If I had the time, maybe I have the time if you want to do a call-in. You want to talk about this in a call-in? Aaron, tell me right now, otherwise I'll just work it out in my head. Are you in Mexico? We can talk about this. You up for it? Skype? Yeah, I got about 30 minutes. Otherwise, I'll give you my take just from what you wrote. Some days are better than others. I'm tired of feeling like this. If I can refresh your mind, I did the same thing you did in a video about, please, God, give me a sign. Everyone loves that video. Everyone loves. That's like probably the favorite video. Have you seen that one, Danny, on my channel?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the same thing that happened to you happened to me. She only called me to let me know she cheated at that point. Well, I don't think that's the same thing that happened to me. I never got a call. She only called me to let me know she cheated at that point. I gave her, you are not my problem. You're someone else's problem. And she was shocked from that response that helps me move on. Now that I know the video you're talking about, but that the sign I got wasn't a call. And it wasn't that I was cheated on. It was I was able to view some emails that came to my attention. But I was never told that I was cheated on. And just exercise, find new people to interact or that have the same interests like you for you to connect. 2 years later, she contacts you, though, one-legged pigeon. Wow. That's vindication and validation, I suppose. Did it feel good that she contacted you 2 years later? You can't read the... if you could read the... He said it did. She's fat. And you're looking great. You used it as fuel to break up. You know what's really interesting, man? Habits are compounding. And it's like if your ex or you have bad habits out of a breakup, you can go one or two ways. It can get like within 2 years, someone that has bad eating habits can get really big. I had a few tonight, of course. Oh, you don't have to be sorry. I think you were just being honest. I don't think that's you being a jerk or something like that. I mean, if that's true, it's true. People are really sensitive about that, right? Being fat or someone saying that. If it hurts your feelings, then exercise, then go on a diet, then figure it out. Shit, when I was a kid, I was really skinny. Skinny people get made fun of too. Danny's extremely skinny, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they don't get made fun of. It's a different kind of thing. But if that's true, it's true. I'm probably the best version of myself. I lost 30 pounds. I lost 30 pounds of muscle. Well, I mean, I think you worded that wrong. I lost 30 pounds of muscle. I lost 30 pounds muscle something. So then I would dare to say that the breakup was good for you. One thing that we lose track of is our partner's bad habits. I don't think people look at this. I looked at this now that I've been doing breakup coaching, and I analyze my past relationships more just when I'm looking at other people's relationships. You don't know first of all, if you live with someone or you're with them often, you're going to pick up things from them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to... Good habits and bad habits. If you have a best friend or a roommate that smokes cigarettes, there's a better chance of you smoking cigarettes. 100%. I don't mean it's a 100% chance that you do, but there's a 100% more likelihood that you will. And so if you would have stayed together and there were some bad eating habits there, of course. Of course. And the great thing is now that you're in good shape, you could stay that way. All right, Aaron, I didn't hear back from you, so I guess you don't want to do a call. But let me circle back to this. Maybe you're in a busy situation, because I want to unpack this with you. First of all, I'm not familiar with the term I suffer depersonalization. Are you familiar with that, Danny?
No.
Depersonalization and desrealization from anxiety. I'm not familiar with those terms. I've been in a lot of stress, lost my dad, granddad. I am familiar with losing someone I really care about. I've lost my sister. She passed away a couple of years ago. We'll get to the girlfriend in a moment. Mm-hmm. But deaths in your family, you can reframe it and find something in there that has you live with it in a better way. What do I mean by that? Man's search for meaning, Viktor Frankl. His wife died in the prison camp. He had many friends die in the prison camp. And the way you can look at that, your loss of your dad right now, look at the good things, the good times, but also, what advice would your dad give you, Aaron? What would he tell you if he got... I had a relative that's been really wanting to... Her husband passed away over 10 years ago, and she's highly spiritual, and the husband died of cancer. It wasn't a surprise death. It was one of those things with cancer that, you knew it was coming. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it's inevitable, but it's sad. Don't get me wrong. It's messed up. But like 10 years later, she wants a medium to find her husband to talk to him. Which I don't think's that crazy. That's fine. And she's highly spiritual. Okay. But what I thought to myself is, don't you know what he'd say to you? That's deep. If I've had this thought with my sister, I know what she would say to me, because I know my sister. I know her so well. Aaron, you know your dad really well, and you know your granddad really well. What would they say to you if they had a chance to have a little conversation with you? It was toxic. I just found myself, and I learned why I attracted her in the first place. I worked on those things, not date the same kind of person again. That's a big one. One-legged pigeon, how old are you? If you're in Boston, you probably went to university there, since 1 in 3 people in Boston are students, I believe it is, if that's still the case. I allow myself to feel it. Tell myself it's a moment. Okay, thanks for this, Leandra. I allow myself to feel it. So what she's saying there is, if she gets a negative thought or a trigger, she doesn't fight the negativity or the feeling. Tell myself it's a moment in time. Very true. I talk about this a lot, that everything's a series of moments. This is why when we have these books about how can you be happy, you could be happy in moments, but newsflash, you're not going to be happy 24/7. And I think I've told this to you before, Danny. People that act happy 24/7, we think something's wrong with them.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a jerk or an asshole, but it's very human to get upset sometimes, right? I mean, as a teacher for years, there's sometimes I'll have a good class and something will just set me off. And I'm like, why did I get so upset? But at the same time, it just shows that you care. If you didn't care, you wouldn't get upset about things sometimes. Mm-hmm. Tell myself it's a moment in time and that I'll be okay. I love okay because okay is neutral. It's not bullshitty, if that's even a word, you know? It's not like, you'll be excellent. You'll be outstanding, Leandra. You're gonna make $1 million next year from Dean Granzinelli on YouTube. Right? Yeah. It's like just neutralize it. I'll be okay. I like that. And it will pass, and I don't just believe that. I know it. Great. So is this a mantra you use all the time? I think that's great that you're going off your antidepressants. I know that's a sensitive issue because I've never been on antidepressants. I just like the idea that eventually you don't want to be on those forever. And I like the fact that you're going in that direction. I think that's great. I think that you can get to a point where you don't feel like you need those. That's the pinnacle, hon. So I allow myself to feel it, tell myself it's a moment in time, and that I'll be okay, and it'll pass, and I don't just believe that. I know it. I know it's such a different statement than I think. I like that. Did someone give you that as a mantra, or did you come up with that yourself, Leandra? One-legged pigeon is 28 years old. Look up Saturn's Return because you're right in the middle of it, dude. This is right when I moved to Thailand. 28 years old, changed my career, left everything in the dust. I remember I gave a friend a TV. I even gave some clothes away. That's a great mantra, hon. That's really nice. And I really think it's important to say, I don't just believe it, I know it. I think that's really important. I've actually, if you look at the law of attraction, and there's a lot of looseness to the law of attraction. Part of the law of attraction is what you just said at the end. It's to know it's true. Knowing something's true is so much different than thinking it or hoping it or wishing it. Totally different. If you look at the things you know about yourself, right? It's one of the reasons, like, you hear me say, I have a really good memory. Oh, Mac, you say that all the time. It reinforces it to myself. Does that, like, I'm saying that in a way that I want to have a good memory. Mm-hmm. I want it to be true. So me saying it each time reinforces it to the subconscious to be that way. Rob, are you familiar with Saturn's Return? No? When I was 28 and I was going through that bad breakup and I was going through some job stuff, like stacking everything, turning point in my life. Like I said, this is when I moved to Thailand. I was 28. No problem. People were like, oh, you're in Saturn's Return. I'm like, I've never even heard of this shit. I'm 28 years old. Yeah, because you get it when you're 28. You ever hear this, Dan?
Saturn Returns?
Yeah, Saturn's. I'll look it up right now and tell you about it. Because when you're 28, and it's kind of funny because there's nothing out there that someone goes, oh, when you're 28, this happens.
Yeah.
Person Plant says, I don't want memory. I want to forget. That's someone that's in a bad breakup. Person Plant, please send me your story and let's unpack it. I'll help you. I was there before where I remember thinking, I wish I had amnesia. So I get it. But you don't want to lose all your memories, do you? I don't think it works where you can just lose one. Here's what you can do. Reframe that memory. Or if it's really bad, I would suggest hypnotherapy, which is something else I started doing this year. I don't have it on my website, but I've done it for many people. It helps. It works. Danny, you've done a hypnotherapy with me. Was it helpful?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Right? It's helpful. It's one of those things you don't notice it because it's not something that's going to you're just going to change in a day. Right? You'll definitely feel better after you do it, I think. It's definitely not something that's going to be like, oh, I didn't like that at all or anything. But if you're really having trouble with a memory that you're going over again, therapy's good, talking to a coach is good, going over your story's good. Hypnotherapy is one of the next steps. I've done it myself. It's not immediate. That's what I think people get lost in. I want immediate. I think that's why a lot of people like the idea of medicine. It's very easy to swallow a pill, and the doctor, it feels like you're immediately doing something, which I take medicine. I take medicine sometimes, so this is not me just going, medicine's horrible. But I think that's one of the draws to it, right? There's no work involved. Mm-hmm. Like hypnotherapy, you're going to have to do a mantra. You're going to have to talk about some things that maybe are uncomfortable. You might have to, talk about your problem. Therapy's the same way. It's uncomfortable sometimes for some people, but it's very therapeutic when you get through it. I think what gets lost is who you talk to counts, not the fact that they're just a therapist, PhD, 20 years experience. Do you know what I'm like? I think that you need to choose someone, or if you go to someone and you're not comfortable or you don't like them or you just don't like their information, go to a different person. This is not, something this is having rapport and believing in someone. And we have connections with different people. Does that, you know what I mean? Like, so Leandra's done a live coaching with me before. We had a pretty good connection. And I'm sure you've talked to other people before, Leandra, that you just aren't that comfortable with, or you don't feel comfortable having a, hour or 2 hour conversation about your relationship with. So that's different for people. It's my first relationship of 23 to 25. I was happy being alone and studying. And then I got dependent on this guy, and my confidence went all the way down. And he is confident and abandoned me. Counselor told me I need to focus on moving forward only. Well, that's a simple statement. No offense. Person, plant. Did the counselor, is this a counselor from university that's quite busy? And did they actually ask you what happened? Like why you're feeling this? I think I've been a teacher for years. I said that again. And a breakup coach for a few years now. Like the most important thing is for me to listen to you about what happened. Why are you feeling this way? Let's talk about it. Focus on moving forward only. Okay, well that doesn't... the best case scenario with advice like that? You put it to the side, you bury it, and then 5 years later it bubbles up and you're like, oh shit, where did this come from? You didn't deal with it. It's very important that your first relationship, I think Rob would agree with this, Leandro would agree with this, even One-Legged Pigeon. It's really important that you deal with this in a good way so that you can have a future relationship that's good and you don't generalize that all men are confident and abandoned women. Oh, God. See, this is bad, man. Yes, from a university, she told me that my thoughts are making me sick, and if I don't stop, I need medicine. Oh. Okay. That sounds like someone that doesn't want to give you the time. Was this like a 30-minute appointment where someone else was waiting in the office behind you? I'm just assuming if you go to a major university, they probably have a lot of people that want to talk to counselors. And here's the other thing that's different about counselors. There might be a counselor out there that goes, oh my God, I remember my first breakup, and they talk to you for 2 hours. There's someone else that goes, oh, I've been in a marriage for 5 years, and we have 2 kids, a dog, a picket fence. I got my Prius. Oh, you can just get through it. You know why? Because they've never been through it before. So they don't, oh, you need to just stop thinking about this so much. Right? Mm-hmm. Stop thinking those thoughts. Wow, that's groundbreaking. Like I said, with someone else waiting in the lobby to pick their classes out, this is another thing. You got people out there that are in roles as counselors that might have good intentions, but they're wearing 50 hats. So a counselor at a university, when I remember when I went, they help you pick your classes sometimes. They can talk, you know what I mean? They can talk to you about 1,000 different things. Go to a specialist. You want to talk about breakups? Come to me. Come to one of the other people online or something like that. Take a shot at some. Definitely try something else. If that didn't taste well when they said that to you, don't accept it. Look for other answers. Here's my website. Book a live coaching session. If you don't find it helpful or useful, I'll give you your money back, guaranteed. Never did it before, never gave the money back, but I offer it. Okay, so if your story's highly embarrassing, let's talk about it in private. If it's embarrassing, that means you have shame and guilt. Those are emotions you do not want to carry. And so, like I said, I'll help you with that. I've had shameful and embarrassing things happen to me. Trust me. I know. I'm not bulletproof. I don't think I'm the greatest person on earth or perfect. But you do need to talk about it. And if you feel like this counselor might not be, I'm not saying they're a bad counselor or a bad person. They're just not the right one for you right now. Does that make sense? It's not that easy to just go, oh, this person's a counselor. They're the person that knows everything. No. They could be having some things in their life. They could hate men. They could, there's a variety of things there. So one of the things that helps, I think, if you have an embarrassing thing, if we talk online, you can talk from your room. I talk to a lot of people in their parking lots, because you get privacy. You don't even have to walk through a waiting room. You know what I mean? That's actually nice. Sometimes people don't even want to go through that waiting room. So you could talk in your room. No one's going to listen. I don't record anything. I don't tell anyone. And you know what? Because I don't know you, I don't judge you in that way. I don't judge you in that way. My objective is to help you and give you useful information moving forward. And the first meeting that we meet in is to unpack your story. Your story really counts. If this counselor didn't even ask or take the time to listen to your story, then there's just giving you advice to stop thinking the way you do is incredibly difficult to do without reverse engineering what actually went down. What are you studying, Person Plant? I'm assuming biology with a name like Person Plant. You can't change what happens to you if it's out of your control. What you can change is how to move forward. It starts with getting clear on your story. Your story is your interpretation of the events that went down. I feel it's my fault because I yelled at times and got angry at times in 2 years. Well, Person Plant, let me tell you something. Electrical engineering. Okay. Well, you sound like a very sophisticated individual. This isn't your specialty. You're an electrical engineer. Your specialty is not breakups. This is the first time you went through it. Come to someone like myself that this is pretty much what I do full time. Okay? And if you don't find it useful or helpful, then like I said, you can have a refund. But don't go to a counselor at university that's saying, oh yeah, go on meds and just change your thoughts. That's kind of bleak, actually. Right, Danny? Mm-hmm. I mean, what if you came to me and you were my student and you're like, I'm having a lot of hey man, just change your thoughts. Change the way you're thinking. Well, how would you you'd be like, I've been trying to do that, Mac. Right? How do I change my thoughts? Just get positive. Just move forward. Oh, really? How do I do that? Well, stop thinking about that. Get some medicine. Jeez, that's bleak, man. What is it to me when I went through it? And I'm a talker, obviously. Mm-hmm. Danny, you're more of an introvert. We talked about this before. But you still need to talk, right? Mm-hmm. You still, like, what I found extremely therapeutic during my bad breakup over 10 years ago, if you let me talk to you about it for an hour and a half, and it was better than when it wasn't a friend, or 2 hours, just someone needs to just be listened to, especially if it's a private thing that you're shameful about, right? Yeah. And someone goes, all right, let's just talk about it for an hour and a half, and I won't put a timestamp on it. We're like, 30 minutes, we got someone waiting behind you, sorry, or an hour. That's where it ends. I'll see you next week. For breakups, sometimes I've talked to people for 4 hours straight. Sometimes they're repeating themselves. But you know what? They had to get it out because it's all these different thoughts. What I do when I talk to you is I ask you really good questions that unpack the interpretations that aren't helping you. And the goal is for you to come up with the answers, but for me to help guide you towards what you really want or what's in your best interest. I never say, hey, just do this. If someone goes, well, I don't like that. Okay, so why don't you like that? So that's a totally different approach than just direct advice, right? There's so many emotions in a breakup, especially if you're under the impression that you did something shameful or embarrassing. You really got to get to the bottom. This is going to affect future relationships, and it'll affect you. If you're going for a PhD, you need a clear head, right? Person plant, double P. Set up the live coaching session, and like I said, you won't regret it, I promise. Anyone else have some closing questions? We got 8 on deck, 5 likes. Thanks for the donations or no donations. That's just fine. I'll do it anyways. I like what I do. Saturn's return I did look up just for people that are kind of wondering. With the first Saturn, a person leaves youth behind and enters adulthood. With the second return, maturity. And with the third, usually final return, a person enters wise old age. These periods are estimated to occur at roughly ages 27 to 31. I was always told 28. 56 to 60, 84 to 90. Wow. Someone's like 84. I'm in Saturn's return right now. I'm in the final stages of Saturn return of wise old age. I didn't know there was 3 stages of it, but it's kind of an interesting thing if you're into astrology, that basically you really become an adult about 27, 28, and if you're not at where you want to be, it's going to be really rough. So like if you've been putting to the side that you're in a career that you don't like, if you're in a relationship you don't like, between 27, 28, 29, it's going to bust apart. The dam's going to break and you're going to have to grow up. That's what Saturn Return is about from what I've heard. If you're in a really good place, things will just get better, is what I was told. People that relate to Saturn's return are like, oh my God, when I was 28, that's exactly what happened to me. For me, it was right on time, right at 28. It's like, bam, shit hit the fan. So it was like, oh yeah, that's how astrology works. Oh, I identify with that. That's me. We're up to an hour. This is always the time, Danny, when I check the clock and I'm like, 58 minutes. That must be that's about my time where I'm like, okay, we got it in. Anyone else want to chime in before I cut out, call it curtains? Is forgiveness the only way forward? For a breakup, it depends on what are you forgiving for, and are you sincerely forgiving someone? Right? I think you can forgive someone, but it's hard to forget.
Yeah.
Right? But I think another word besides forgive, because maybe you're like, what you did, I can't really forgive you. I can accept it, though, because that's who you are. Would it be in a perfect world best to forgive? Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. If you're not ready to do it, don't try. You might need time to process. You need to build a case of why you're doing it. You also need to be at a point in your life where the person that hurt you and what they did, it doesn't really matter anymore. It's hard to forgive someone that's still affecting you in some way. So like if someone does something to you that's still affecting you, it's really hard to forgive them. I think the first part of getting through a breakup, and this takes time, is to accept why the breakup happened, good, bad, happy, or sad. And writing out your story and unpacking it with me is one of the first goals. Or at least getting clear. Like so many people go, well, I don't know why they did this. I don't know why they did that. And then they write their story out, and I'm like, well, right here they told you that they're no longer attracted to you and they want to move to a new town, and this is why they don't want. Yeah, but I think it's more than that. Why would they not tell you the truth? You know what I'm saying? You're creating new narratives. Forgiveness is not the only way forward. I would say for you, it sounds like releasing this guilt, shame, or embarrassment that whatever you did or whatever they did to you, you might have to forgive yourself, person, plant. That I can help you with. I have a remedy that helps with that. Start like this. I forgive every night before you go to bed. When you brush your teeth, I hope you brush your teeth before bed. Not everyone does. I forgive myself. I'm doing the best I can right now. Great mantra to start with. What's up, Petty Betty? You're late to the party. Sorry, hun. The keg's toast. Petty Betty, depression, anxiety when the breakup goes down. There's no misinterpretation of what happened to me. What's important is not letting it get to the better of me. Oh, man, that sucks. I like what you said, Leandra. I'm not necessarily saying when someone, your interpretation's your interpretation, right? The only thing that's really true that we don't really argue over is like 2 + 2 is 4. It's kind of drilled in every culture, right? We have different alphabets, we have different languages. Like, have you ever thought about it? We have different words for colors.
Yeah.
Like the word, like black is a color. In Thai, black is dumb, right?
Yeah.
Which means something completely different in English. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, is that a misinterpretation? Different, just different.
Yeah.
Language is interpretation. We're using words to use interpretation. Thank you. Even if you don't mean it, if you don't want to forgive someone because they've hurt you, don't force yourself to forgive someone. By the way, but you do need to forgive yourself, hun, at some point. That a lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong, we got a wide variety of people here. T-Mac, it's been a while. I hope you're well, bud. A lot of people, even people that do bad things, they weren't born. I don't believe people were born bad. You know what I mean? I don't think people were born that way. There's been a series of events in their life that have shaped who they are and what they do. A lot of people that are twisted, messed up, mean, you didn't live their life, man. You didn't go through what they went through during childhood or something that happened to them. And this is something I found in doing my work now. Like, we get into a lot of deep, different things. People are way more intricate than you'll ever know. Human beings have way more stored in that brain system. So you just think, oh, someone cheated on me, they're horrible. It wasn't that they just did that. There was something that led up to that thinking and doing that. Will you forgive them? You forgive yourself too. Start with acceptance. Let forgiveness creep in, but if you can get to a point where you forgive yourself and tell yourself, honestly, most of the time we're doing the best we can, even if it's not very good. Right? Because it's just based on our expectations of ourselves. I just think that this breakup stuff much anymore. Just thought I'd say hi. Great, T-Mac. That is outstanding. I knew it would get to that point for you because you got a lot going for yourself. Did you ever get to go work overseas? I just sold my condo. I'm looking at properties a couple hours from Vancouver. Outstanding, dude. Good for you, T-Mac. Moving places is a great way to reinvent yourself. And some people think, like, what do you mean reinvent? Whenever you move to somewhere new, it's such a nice, it's like a fresh slate. And you can reinvent yourself in new ways and do things that you weren't able to do before. I think that's outstanding. No travel from Canada. I just sold a bit of Bitcoin. Oh, Rob, sold a bit of Bitcoin. That could mean millions. They stick you in a quarantine hotels for $2,000 and feed you bologna sandwiches. That doesn't sound fun. Yeah, if you came to Thailand, you'd have to go 2 weeks quarantine. But you can. You can come. You have to do 2 weeks of quarantine, though. And you have to get tested before. A friend of mine that's from Canada just came over here. And he's so happy he's here. No offense. He's from Toronto. He's like, oh, my God. I missed it. All right, folks. Wish you all the best. Person Plant. Let's get a session in soon. I think it would really help you with your situation. Petty Betty, thanks for coming in late. Better late than not late. And Rob, first and foremost, I want to say thank you because you're always on deck. Guardian at the gate. Curtains.